In the world of psychology, Carl Rogers is practically considered a god, and his concept of unconditional positive regard is treated like the absolute holy grail. Every therapist is taught to have this. It basically means accepting and supporting a person exactly as they are, without any judgment. But today, I am going to say something that will probably upset a lot of people in my fraternity. I do not have unconditional positive regard for all, not at least anymore. And honestly, I think it is a massive pretension that we need to immediately stop. So here is the juice. Human beings are simply not capable of absolute unconditional positive regard. It is an ideal that looks beautiful in an academic textbook, but in the messy practical reality of human behavior, it is mostly just a performance. Even Carl Rogers himself struggled to practice what he preached. People conveniently forget the actual history. During his time at the University of Wisconsin in the early 1960s, Rogers had a famously bitter and explosive falling out with his own colleagues in the psychology department. The environment became so toxic, and filled with interpersonal conflict that he ultimately resigned and left the department entirely. Where was the unconditional positive regard then? Hmm? When his own boundaries and academic values were challenged, he reacted exactly like any normal human being, with frustration, judgment, and ultimately detachment. Now, I know some textbook purists will immediately jump in here and say, wait, unconditional positive regard was only, ever meant as a clinical tool for clients in the therapy room, not for life in general. Okay, so let's challenge that. Rogers himself also preached congruence. Remember? Meaning a therapist must be absolutely genuine and authentic. If you are naturally judging a toxic person in your real life, but artificially switching on unconditional acceptance the moment you step into a clinic, you are not being authentic. You are acting. You are being incongruent. And worse, this purely clinical concept has now leaked into the real world, and people are demanding it in their marriages and their friendships, etc. Other heavyweight psychologists, absolutely saw through this and went completely against Rogers. Look at Dr. Albert Ellis, the founder of Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, that's REBT. Ellis explicitly argued that just sitting there passively validating a client is harmful. He believed clients need to accept themselves, but the therapist's job is to actively confront them, challenge their irrational beliefs, and call out their nonsense. Or take Fritz Perls, the founder of Gestalt therapy. Perls famously mocked the idea of being a safe, nodding harbor. If you watch his famous clinical sessions, he intentionally frustrated his clients, challenged their victim mentalities, and flat out told them when they were being phony. He believed friction was necessary for human growth. Even historically, the greatest philosophers knew this idea of unconditional acceptance was deeply flawed. Think about Aristotle, right? He argued in his Ethics that the highest, truest form of love and friendship isn't unconditional at all. It is entirely conditional on virtue. You respect someone because they are actively striving to be a good moral person. If they lose their virtue, the regard breaks. Or look at Friedrich Nietzsche, who believed that unconditionally pitying or accepting someone's flaws actually weakens them. right? True regard, philosophically speaking, demands accountability. It demands that you hold people to a standard. So, we have to ask a very brutal question. Is the person demanding your unconditional positive regard actually worthy of it? Think about how this plays out in modern relationships today. People take this clinical concept and weaponize it, right? One partner acts completely out of line, crosses every boundary, or is emotionally manipulative and then expects unconditional acceptance because you are supposed to love me for who I am. No, that is not how healthy human dynamics work. That is how boundaries get destroyed and people become doormats. I say that nobody in my field is really going to listen to me on this. A lot of therapists will continue with this exact same narrative, keeping up the act even in their everyday practice, right? They will sit there offering absolute validation to people who actually need a harsh reality check. But to me, it is such a drama, and we have to stop it. As a psychologist and just, as a human being first, my regard for you is conditional. It is conditional on your willingness to grow, your accountability, and your basic human decency. If you are engaging in destructive, toxic behavior, you do not get my unconditional positive regard. You get my objective analysis, and you get firm clinical boundaries. We need to stop pretending that blindly validating everyone is some kind of high level virtue. If you are tired of this kind of performative validation and you actually want to do some real accountable work on your relationship dynamics or just plain yourself, book a session with me at lindaashok.com.